today.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Iske. Well, it's an honor for me to meet you. I still have Korea in my mind. That has to do with the fact that I'm looking at Professor Lee and Professor O, and I was so honored to receive the honorary doctoral degree in economics. I spoke with the former Bishop of Rotterdam. He's already in his 80s, and he was very enthusiastic. "Ah, that's so nice. Is it only your 6th honorary degree?" That was a nice remark. But it was a fantastic ceremony. You can imagine when you are active in academic world and you receive such a beautiful university honorary degree is really great. And also the honor that Mr. Ban Ki-moon, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, he was there to congratulate me. So it was a fantastic event. I have the best memories. Talking about best memories, the first time I attended your country was in 2010 as Prime Minister. And I must say, then when you are in the country, you talk with people, you learn about the history, and I was deeply impressed. And when I came back to the Netherlands, I said, in fact, Korea is a kind of model country. Because 70 years ago, you were one of the poorest countries. And if you see what you have achieved, it's amazing. So therefore, I like the dynamism of your country, and since then I've been several times in your country. It's always good to be in Korea. I was there quite recently. I think it was a fascinating visit. I attended, of course, Sogang University. That was a reason to be there. I had a meeting with politicians. I was in another church. I gave lectures. But also, for example, I attended the Korea Social Value Festa. Maybe you heard about it. I think it's a fantastic event in which private companies, but also civil society organizations are active just to say, how can we contribute to get a better Korea, a more social oriented Korea, etc. So I liked all the initiatives. I learned a lot from that visit. Well, now I'm back here in the Netherlands. I'm proud to be Dutch, but also it's good to travel around the world. So after my time in Korea, I went for my work to Malta. I was in Italy, and also I was in the United States in the week of the US presidential elections as a leader of the Dutch delegation. So it was fascinating. People said to me when we arrived there, that was on Saturday and Sunday, well, when you leave the US on Thursday evening, you will not know who will be the next president of the United States. Well, it was completely different. So on the evening we know what really happened. And I'm starting a bit with talking about US politics because you can see the world is changing. You've attended ASML, and that's a good example because ASML is a fantastic company. It's one of the front runners also in Europe, not only in the Netherlands but also in Europe. But if you see what happened with such a company, on the one hand they are confronted with, let's say, actions from the American side. You should not trade with China, and China also is saying, wait, what's happening? So from both sides you see the difficulties. This beautiful example that you can see that Europe is in fact a kind of battlefield between the superpowers. And that concerns me because if we want to solve the issues of today and tomorrow, we need each other. I mentioned Ban Ki-moon. I think he was a great SG of NATO, of the United Nations, and he was also responsible for the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN. And I believe in those goals because this is about quality of life for everyone. And the SDGs are connected with climate change, with the natural resources. It has to do with responsibility. It has to do with partnerships. It has to do with future orientation. And if you want to solve the issues of today, and I must say I'm really concerned about what you can see in our climate. You can see the extremes are increasing year after year. I'm concerned about natural resources. We are with 10 billion people. Are we able to work with so many people, to live with so many people on this planet? And we have also the issue of inequality. You see big differences between the rich and poor, etc. So if you want to solve those issues, we need each other. And if you're honest, history has shown that it is possible to change. We had a terrible time here in Europe in the Second World War. You know the right thing about it. So we had the First World War, then the crisis, and the Second World War. And then people said, after the Second World War, this should never happen again. And then we start with the United Nations. And later on we talk about human rights. And we said, and suddenly there was the issue of the hole in the ozone layer. It was a big risk. And then people discovered, wait a moment, now we have to work together because if you're not able to find solutions for the issue of the big hole in the ozone layer, there's no life at all. And I think at this moment, if we are seeing what's happening with our climate, with nature, with our planet, if we see the natural resources issue, inequality issue, etc., we need each other to find the right solutions. So therefore, I'm a big defender of the SDGs. But before we had SDGs, we had the Millennium Development Goals. That was for developing countries. a program, a 15-year program between 2000 and 2015. And this program has been very successful. In 15 years' time, it was possible to realize 70 or 80% of those goals. And why? There were actions, the willingness to make a progress. At this moment, we talk about SDGs, it's programmed till 2030, but you can see now the world is falling apart. It's a rivalry between China and the US. It's about criticism of the global south and the Western world. We have a terrible war in Ukraine caused by Russia. So we see many tensions in the world, and the big issue is, are we able to realize those goals if we're not working together? This is a big risk. And I like a country like Korea because you are a constructive player. I have to underline that. You must have constructive players, you must have the willingness to work together. So this is one big issue, what's happening in cooperation worldwide. Another dimension, I'm a bit concerned what we see now in the United States. If you are talking about doing investments, it's so important that people are willing to invest in sustainable practices. This is key. But now you see in the United States anti-ESG tendencies. And ESG has to do with criteria for doing investments, environment, social and governance. Some companies say, let's not talk too much about sustainability. And I think this is a big risk, because if we want to find a solution for the big issues of today, we need each other. And that means you must have governments on board, businesses, universities, knowledge centers, NGOs, people. But if you see now the attacks on ESG, sustainability practices, then you get difficulties. So I'm concerned about those developments. I'm wearing this tie. Maybe you ask, why are you wearing this red tie? You didn't ask the question, Boan, but
not yet.
No, not yet. Well, this tie is older than 20 years, so this is an example of the circular economy. Use and reuse it. As been a tie, it has been produced in the time when I was Prime Minister. So you can find here the image of the small tower, the official working place of the Dutch Prime Minister. And if you would attend that small tower, this is the smallest room of a Prime Minister in the world. So everyone has big rooms, but it's a very small room. It's really nice. And I have taken this tie with me just to explain, well, this has been made more than 20 years ago, but you can still use it. And this is an example of the circular economy. I do not know whether it's on your mind, but I'm really concerned about the natural resources on this planet. If you are with 10 million people, we have to think about how to produce, how can we produce another way, how to reuse materials, refurbishing, etc. So that's the reason, as a clear example of the circular economy, use it and reuse it.
You also decide not to use it, not to wear a tie.
That's also possible. That's your solution.
There's a reduction of using.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
To some extent, I'm serious here.
I thought so. This is what we call a brilliant failure. Because so I said let's visualize what you can do with, let's say, the circular economy. You said no, you should not produce it even. So don't produce. This is example. It's always fun with talking with Professor Iske with his beautiful examples. You heard, of course, I've been talking with you about how can you learn from mistakes. So I will tell the people in general first, never produce ties. So there's also a possibility. Thanks for your correction. But if you talk about the circular economy, I think it's a fantastic view on how to produce in other ways. And I think it has also to do with economic opportunities. I was invited 3 times to participate in online seminars in Japan, and why? The Netherlands was a kind of front runner in Europe. And I have the impression that those companies that are willing to act in the right way regarding circularity, they will be the winners in the long run. So we are living in times of fundamental changes. So you must have a lot of innovation, new insights. You need breakthroughs. And I like cars. So I attended Kia, Hyundai in your country. Kia is the best-selling car at the moment in the Netherlands. So I think it's really great. But you also, already many years, you could see those companies, they understood how to produce things another way, more focusing on electric vehicles already a long time ago. The design is okay, the price-quality relationship is really okay. But you can see now, if you are waiting too long, you will be the loser. And if you talk about cars, we've seen that now in Europe. Suddenly there is an import of Chinese cars. Suddenly the Chinese improve the quality of cars and they have EVs. And companies like Volkswagen, BMW, Mercedes wait in fact too long. And this is the world in which we're living. You must have a kind of creativity. So I would like to underline the fact that it's necessary to innovate, to have new views. You need breakthroughs. Having said that, it's about sustainability, circularity. It's, I think, also about your moral compass. And you are a Roman Catholic organization, a university. From time to time I refer to the encyclical Laudato Si of Pope Francis. I think it's a beautiful document, and it's about how do we consider this planet. And our planet is being considered as our common home. It's a beautiful wording. And therefore, many issues of today are related to values. How can you contribute to a better society? What are your values? What is the DNA of your organization? What's the purpose of your activities? And I notice that more and more people are talking about these issues. I have a colleague at Erasmus University. He said, usually we always talk about what are we doing? That's the first circle. The bit broader circle is how are we doing things? But the biggest circle is why are we doing things? The why question. And I notice more and more that this issue around what's the why has a fundamental importance for bringing up the question, what's our relevance? What are we exactly doing? Are we just making a cash-making machine as a company, or are we contributing to a better society? I think this is really key. When I stopped as Prime Minister in 2010, I was elected in 2002, and then 2010, then I stopped. And then I had an upgrade in my life. I became partner at EY, Ernst & Young. And I became partner corporate responsibility. And corporate responsibility has to do with the fact, how can you integrate sustainability into business models? And I think that was really great. And there was an American professor, Michael Porter. He has written a document with the title, Creating Shared Value. And traditionally, people said, well, if you have your company, you produce and you must be profitable, etc. And he said, wait a moment, of course you must be profitable, otherwise you cannot keep your people employed, you cannot invest in R&D, but at the same moment you must contribute to finding solutions for society. You have to create societal value, and economic value, and societal value. So that means that if you think about the role of companies, it is changing. And this has to do with morality. And what I notice more and more, the questions of today have to do with moral issues. What is really the guiding principle in your life? And I'm a Christian as well. I always believe in the concept of responsibility. Who is responsible for what? And how do you act when you have your responsibilities? Can you act in a responsible way? That means if you talk about, let's say, being active in a business, the question is, how do you contribute to stewardship, to solidarity, to taking care of our planet, etc.? So many of the issues of today have to do with values. I had a remarkable experience a few months ago. There was a day called CSRD Day. CSRD means the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. That's a directive from the EU. And then one of the young guy, he was one of the organizing the event, he said, can you give the closing speech? And then I said, well, shall I talk about innovation? Shall I talk about sustainability? No. He said, when you're Prime Minister, you always underlined the essence of values. Please make remarks about that. And the second point is, please talk about the role of civil society. It was remarkable that in such a day about a technical issue, CSRD, suddenly it was about values, about responsibility, the role of how to organize society in the right way. I think this is very fascinating. And therefore we're living in a time we need inspiration, we need future orientation, and we need new views, new breakthroughs. And therefore, it's my conviction we should work together on a global scale. And therefore I'm extremely concerned about developments today. Yesterday I heard that President Trump, he suggested even to have military tax on Greenland. Panama is also in the threat. When I was at Heritage Foundation, that's a foundation that's supporting the Republicans, I said, well, it's good, you have Mr. Wilders here in the Netherlands, and you can have bilateral agreements with President Bush. I thought, my God, I'm not interested because I'm part of the European Union. So many things are happening, so therefore it's so important to have a long-term view, a moral compass, and act in the right way. Unfortunately, the world does not only exist let's say, political leaders, it's also about the role of business, NGOs, cities, etc. And it's my conviction we can learn from each other. That's the reason I was enthusiastic about Korea when I was there. I think I've set Korea as an example for other countries. I believe in the SDGs because we need a moral framework to do the right things. And it's also important that young generations, that they have picked up their responsibility. I must say, I see developments that a lot of young people throughout the world, they see what's happening. They talk about freedom and democracy and respect for others, etc. I think we need those orientations, otherwise you can forget it. And last point, of course, it has to do also with your moral views. Therefore, the inspiration of your university is also very key. I think it's important. So it's a risk when politicians have the microphone, they don't stop talking. I'm not a politician any longer, so it's better to stop now. And just, I hope that you enjoyed the Netherlands. Yeah? You enjoy it? Why? Why did you enjoy the Netherlands? It's good. Well, it's dry at the moment. My God, it's been raining so much. If you talk about extremes in the weather conditions, you can see it here. It's really remarkable. But why did you like the Netherlands? What was so interesting about it?
Many global companies
Yeah.
working together,
Yeah.
and many diverse countries work together. It is inspiring.
Yeah. So this has to the big companies working here. That's other arguments as well. What do you think? What do you like about the Netherlands? Yeah.
Well, first of all, we've been here about five years,
Yeah.
and we met for kind of weather,
Yeah.
like a dynamic sun.
Yeah.
And also, I heard the Netherlands is a merchandise country, and I feel that right here, and yeah, something like that. Because this country is not that big country, but
No.
they have been there in global and from 16th century. That's why.
That's our golden age. Yeah.
So the DNA still learning
Yeah.
in the stream, I think.
Yeah.
So that was the best part in level.
Yeah. No, that's nice observations. I think the Netherlands is a nice country. In fact, it's a remarkable country because more than 1/3 is below sea level. So we have always the struggle against the power of the water. It's a big risk. In 1953, we had a terrible water flood. I lost also family members. I'm from the southwestern part of the country, so that also occurs here in this country. So we know how to handle it. Sometimes when there are water issues, people say, "Let's bring in the Dutch." That has to do with our knowledge about water management. That's true. And in this country, people are always complaining. We complain about politicians, we complain about each other, we complain about the weather, we always complain. But if people would say, but what's the alternative? No. And when people are abroad and hospital, oh, I wish I was in the Netherlands. And you have also people for financial reasons, they are living in Spain, but then they miss the atmosphere of the Netherlands. So I think we are complaining a lot, but I think still it's a great country. That's true. Well organized, it's a nice country. Questions from your side?
우리 총리님께 혹시 궁금하신 사항이나 수업하면서 느꼈던 것 중에 질문하시고 싶으신 거 있으시면은 자유롭게 한국말 하시면 돼요.
그러면 저 한국말 보면 저희 좀 이렇게 좀 듣다가 규제가 되게 많은데 이유 포함해서 그러면 이거 이렇게 그러면은 이 네덜란드 내부에서도 좀 스타트업이라든지 기업들이 이제 이거 규제가 너무 많다. 좀 컴플레인이 좀 많을 것 같은데 그게 문제가 없나요?
We've been through so many organizations, and then also even we went to have an opportunity to go to Deloitte about CSRD and ESG. According to him, he found that there are so many regulations now at the EU level, and then are there any complaints about that, or making a trouble?
Yeah, there's an excellent translation, by the way. You're completely right. People are convinced that if you want to serve society, we need legislation. It's very good that Europe has a strategy called the Green Deal. It's good to have those directives. So the orientation, that's not the point. But there are technicalities, and that makes life a bit difficult because you have so many obligations, so many administrative burdens. This is a bit a point of concern. So if you're talking with businesses, many of them will say, we need sustainable practices, we need regulation, but should we make it a bit more easy for companies to follow it up? That's one of the discussions. So yesterday I had a meeting with the leader of my, I'm working at EY, so that's, let's say, a colleague or competitor of Deloitte. And I said, maybe it's good that the leaders of those audit firms would talk with each other about how can you do things in a maybe better way. It must also be practical. So the point is a bit, the orientation is okay, but it's a bit complicated. So a lot of companies have to report about everything, and the question, what's being done with that? So I understand that question, but on the other hand, you must do it, because if not, you get difficulties. And that's my point of concern. If you see the administration now in the US is in fact denying issues like climate change. And there you will see tensions between the US at the moment and, let's say, the European orientation. This can lead to a lot of difficulty, so I'm concerned about that. And therefore it's important that countries like your country, Korea, Australia, and other countries, that they go on with doing the right practices. When I was Professor Lee, and you had a seminar about ESG, that was an example that in Korea people are talking about ESG. But if you talk about ESG, you must have the willingness to think about the consequences. You have to think about the views on the role of the companies, etc. And that's my point of concern. If you see what's happening now in the United States, it's not in line with what was necessary in the world of today. But you're right, there are many obligations, there are many directives. I understand it, but make it practicable. I think this is the key issue at the moment.
네, 전반적으로 그 컨선을 공유를 하시고요. 하지만 이런 새로운 ESG나 서스테너빌리티가 그러는 방향에 대해서 그러한 거에 대한 규제는 필요하다. 그러한 거에 사회적인 합의는 필요하나 테크니컬하게 들어가면 너무나 회사들이나 기업들이 이것들을 실행하는 너무 어려움이 있는 걸 인정하시고 그러한 것들에 대해서 우리가 어떻게 그러면 좀 더 중요한 부분은 따라가지만 쉽게 규제적으로도 회사들이 적용할 수 있고 그 다음에 그렇게 사회에 이렇게 뿌리내릴 수 있게 하는 노력들을 같이 병행이 돼야 된다. 공감하셨습니다. 하나나 두 개 더 받아볼까요? 예.
During the 4-day class, we learned a lot about Dutch trust and cooperation-based success stories. What is the main reason why the Netherlands was able to become a trust-based society?
A trust-based society is a very good one. Let me go back to the year 1995. Francis Fukuyama, the famous author, he's written a book with the title Trust. And he said high trust societies, high trust economies, high trust companies are performing much better than low trust societies. Because if you have high trust in a country, it's easier to make agreements. It's easier to realize your goals. So I believe in the fact of trust in society. And then what about the Netherlands? I already mentioned the fact that we are partly below sea level. So already for 1,000 years we have the battle against the water. So in early days people were obliged to work together to keep your feet dry, to have dikes and dunes, etc. And if you talk about reclaiming land, for example, you must have the willingness to work together. So we have this orientation of working together already for 1,000 years. That's one. You talked about let's say the golden age of the Netherlands in the 17th century. In fact, the Netherlands performed above its weight. We had the Dutch East India Company. Now it's being criticized, but in those days it was a trading organization. And why was it so interesting? Even ordinary people, so not the nobility, ordinary people were able to buy shares in that company. So it's remarkable that already in those days, and it was the first multinational, so already in those days people discovered that if you want to be successful, you must have the willingness to work together, to have companies with shares, that you can share risks and profits. So there's also an example of the willingness to work together. In the 19th century, in Europe we had a battle between labor and capital, even a class struggle, the upcoming of the Marxists, etc. You could see that here in this part of the world. In the Netherlands we always had a more moderate view. Roman Catholic people, Protestant people said you should have cooperation between labor and capital, not a battle but cooperation. After the Second World War, it was a terrible time. This country was a ruin because of the war. Then people said we must have the willingness to work together to build up our economy and our society. In the 1980s, then we had big economic issues. The state debt was increasing, budget deficit was more than 10%, etc. Youth unemployment was all there. And then people said, employers and employees, we should have a moderate wage development. And then the government facilitated by lowering taxes. So there was also an example of the willingness to work together. In the time when I was Prime Minister, of course there was a demonstration here in Amsterdam against my cabinet of the unions. That was the outside. But confidentially we had meetings with the unions and the Employees Association to find a way out. So I had in my time 7 or 8 social agreements. So we discovered you must work together. We had the innovation platform. So if you want to strengthen our innovation in the country, you must have a cooperation between top people of the cabinet, top people from the universities and top people from the business sector. That's an example. After my time as Prime Minister, we have had an energy agreement, a climate agreement, a pension agreement. So it in fact is deeply rooted in our society, the conviction you must have the willingness to work together, and that can make you stronger. I think this is the reason why it is not only, let's say, something with last years, it has a century-old history. So it has to do with the characteristics of your own society. So I think these are one of the reasons that we were able to work together. But you're right, trust is a very important element in society, and if not, you get difficulties.
His conclusion and advice for Korea is time to go for the years, so it takes time. Let me summarize in Korean very briefly. 그 사회의 트러스트라는 거는 비용도 줄이고 이 사회가 발전할수록 사회에서 모든 것들이 더 용이하게 쉽게 거래가 되고 계약이 될 수 있게 하는 중요한 요소다라는 그러한 책도 이미 오래전에 발표가 됐다라고 얘기를 하시면서 네덜란드의 사례는 이미 역사적으로 자연적인 환경에서부터 이게 많이 태동을 했다고 그럽니다. 네, 그래서 네덜란드 폴더 해수면보다 낮은 땅을 갖고 있잖아요. 거기에서 어떻게 하면 우리가 함께 문제를 극복할 수 있을까에서부터 시작이 돼서 그 이후로 16, 17세기 BOC 사례를 들으면서 이스트 인디 컴퍼니 그 최초의 멀티 인터내셔널 컴퍼니를 운영하면서 거기에서 사용되는 쉐어는 어느 특정 세력이만 살 수 있었던 게 아니고 모든 일반적인 국민들까지도 그 쉐어를 지분을 살 수 있는 권한이 주어졌다는 거예요. 거기서도 함께 이러한 것들을 발전해 나가고 누구는 배제하고 하는 게 work together의 컨셉이 거기도 적용이 됐고요. 그 이후로 2차 세계대전이나 네덜란드 경제적으로 어려움을 겪었던 때나 우리 총리님께서 이 국정을 운영하실 때도 여러 사회적인 이슈들이 있을 때마다 어떻게 하면 서로 다른 의견을 갖고 있더라도 워킹 투게더 할 수 있겠느냐, 이 컨셉과 필로소피가 이 사회는 오랜 동안 작동을 했다는 거죠. 네, 여러 가지 메시지를 던져준다고 저는 생각이 되고, 우리 특히 이제 한국의 현재 상황을 볼 때 어떻게 다른 생각을 갖고 있는 이 양극단의 이 포지션에 있는 사람들도 함께 워킹 투게더 할 수 있는 이 필로소피가 중요하다라고 말씀하셨습니다. What do you think about my translation?
It was brilliant as always. I'm so surprised. Maybe also to add something. I mentioned also the Roman Catholic Church. The social teaching of the Roman Catholic Church has been relevant in bringing labor and capital together in this country. The Protestant views, Protestant Christian views on organization of society is also very important. When I was in Korea, also the opening of the Kuiper exhibition hall in Sarang Church. It's a Protestant church. Abraham Kuyper, he was a famous theologian. He founded a free university here in Amsterdam. He founded Reformed churches in the Netherlands. He was the founder of the first political party in the Netherlands. He became prime minister. And he always underlined the necessity of sphere sovereignty. He said the government should recognize plurality in society. The government should recognize that there are societal organizations and they should have their own rights and freedoms. So the combination of these different views made that we are convinced that you must have the willingness to work together, to respect each other, and you must have the willingness to work together. I think these things are really key for our society. So it's also a moral issue.
Do you have a question?
I didn't raise your position.
Due to our limited timeline, but I think we better to close like this. And on behalf of No Boundaries Academy, also Sogam University, we really greatly appreciate your participation, Professor Balkenende. And then, do you want to do something?
Yeah, let me close this session. First of all, indeed, we very much hear you talk about collaboration and trust. well, what we do trust is your commitment to society in general,
Yep.
also commitment to the Korean case, to the No Boundaries Academy, and we very, very much appreciate it. You know that. Still, we would like to show you a little token of appreciation.
Oh, that's so kind of you.
Here, don't let it drop.
Thank you very much. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank.
So thank you very much.
Yeah.